never lose hope. No matter what the transition is, no matter where they're at, there's always hope. There's always somewhere to go, somewhere to move.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Polaris Connection, connecting parents of autistic children with industry experts. Each week, we navigate the world of autism together, bringing you real conversations from specialists who truly get it. The journey is challenging, but you don't have to walk it alone. So settle in, get cozy, let's connect, and do some good. I am your host, Brad Broyles, and I'm here with my academic buzzword bingo champion, Nathan Palmer.
Brad, thank you. You know, if there's one thing I can say I was good at growing up, it was school and academics.
Yes.
That was always a fun space for me, but I always approached it from the traditional I got good at the box. I got good at the game. I am so excited today to learn about some rules outside the game and breaking some of those boundaries of education with our guest, Dr. Tara Williams, with us today.
And before we introduce her, you know what I'm really excited about her, Nathan, is that our guest today has a PhD in chemistry, which means she literally knows how to blow things up.
First day they teach you how to do that.
But today, Dr. Tara is going to blow your mind with the world of academia and preparing our autistic friends for the college experience. So, Dr. Tara Williams, thank you so much and being part of the connection.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. I'm excited.
Yes, so folks.
Now, I have a question before you get into her background. If I read right, Doctor, your PhD was in not just chemistry, but synthetic inorganic chemistry.
Yes.
I'm sure there are lots of subfields of chemistry. I'm just wicked curious. What is that?
So synthesis meaning making stuff, right?
Okay.
So making products, and inorganic meaning transition metals. So anything in the middle of the periodic table, those ones down here. So organic is all using organics. Inorganic is using those metals. And, everybody's looking for the key to saving energy, right? So CO2 capture and storage. So my whole dissertation was on using transition metals to emulate kind of what nature does, like iron does in plants, to take CO2 from the air. So that's how I got into that. I worked with all air and water sensitive materials. So we did have a lot of small explosions. So
she's into heavy metal.
That's what, she is a heavy metal, or heavy metal Williams. So like I said, she knows how to blow things up, but today she's going to blow your mind. Right? So with your background, that's a perfect segue of starting your company in consulting, in collegiate consulting, a company called Innovative Collegiate Consulting. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. It
awesome. And you've been doing it for 2 decades as a teacher?
Yeah, I've been teaching. I've been teaching for the last 20
did you
years.
say that's a perfect segue?
Yeah, that's what you do when you graduate with a chemistry degree.
No. I have these questions now. How do we get from sucking CO2 out of the air with iron to helping fill the gaps of transitional academia for neurodiverse populations? Connect the dots for me, Doctor.
Hey, Doctor,
Connect the
I
dots.
understand it.
It makes total sense. Okay. I'm a first generation college student in my family. And so when they were like, oh, you can either go to graduate school, like in criminology, which is what I was kind of interested in with my bachelor's in chemistry, or you can get a PhD and it's paid for. So I was like, oh, I'm going to do that. Not knowing that you have to find something no one in the world has ever done and publish it. So that was like my first real world experience there. But I was 23 when I started my PhD. So basically they put you in a classroom. That's part of your, tuition, your money that you get from them, and like a stipend. So I was in a classroom at 23 with students who were 18, 19, some older than me. And that was my first sort of foray into, wow, like people learn very differently. It's not just one way or another. And students would come to me about accommodations, things I had never heard of. So I was like, and trying to think about how most of my chemistry professors, one of them famously turned around to write on the board, never turned around for 50 minutes. We never saw that man for 50 minutes writing on the board and just talking and us being like, what is happening? And I realized when I started teaching, like, I don't ever want to be like that. Like, I really want to be really great for my students. I'm only a TA, but I'm really the face-to-face that they get. So I started thinking about from talking to my students, like, oh, I can make things more visual. I can explain things using food and everyday measurements, and just sort of thinking about how students learn differently or how students are great. Some are great in the lab because they're great with their hands. And that just sort of led me into thinking about different students. And then my PhD's from overseas. So I got to learn about international students and all their systems and how they think differently. And teaching just really made me want to learn about different learning styles and accommodations and what that meant and how we can become better professors for our students.
That's interesting. So I've never asked, and I think we got into this a little bit, Brad, on one of our Neurodiverse episodes about just the cultural differences of different countries as it relates to autism. I'm curious, Doctor, and can I call you Tara or Dr. Williams? What's your preferred?
Tara is great. Tara's great.
Okay. So Tara, I'm really curious, with experience overseas, is there a difference between the learning style of the United States versus other places? And what would those be if there's any that are like that stick out to you?
I mean, I think honestly, in terms of neurodivergence, we are ahead of like in schools of thinking and using accommodations. Like some of those don't even really exist in other countries. That's not something that's really used. And I do think depending on the country, most everybody learns the same, does things the same, and that's just sort of it. There's that box that we're stuck in. We're really stuck in different countries where in England it was getting more popular to learn about learning styles and neurodivergence, but in STEM STEM's an interesting world of trying to get people to think differently, even though there's a lot of neurodivergence in STEM.
No, and it is interesting to see all the different learning models. Is there any model that you've picked up that really works well for our neurodivergent population?
I really like to think about things visually. I think that really helps students, right? So that's sort of my favorite, especially now with the internet. Like I'm teaching chemistry, and this applies to everybody. If we're thinking about like universal design, what works, best for our neurodivergent students will work great for everybody. But I think visualizing things, because when you teach chemistry, you're just telling people that this exists without them ever being able to see it. So finding ways to show them, hey, like this is what a mole of water looks like. If you know what a mole is, it's a very small unit of chemistry, right? So I'll actually do the calculate it in grams, pull it out in a graduated cylinder and be like, this is a mole of water. So it makes sense to them more than just talking about something that doesn't make sense. Or like I said, they don't understand unit conversions a lot. So what is a milligram? So think about, what's measured in milligrams in your home? Oh, it's a pill. So we're going to think of something really tiny versus something like a kilogram, like a gold bar, right? So just thinking about visually, to me, that's what I found works best for most students, neurodivergent and neurotypical, instead of just saying something, right? We know to a lot of students, we can't just say something once and that's it. Oh, I've got it, right? It takes a lot of different methods there.
I like that. And it's funny. We've had a couple of guests on now where we talk about accommodations, right? Where we're, instead of fitting the round peg into the square hole, we talk about changing the hole, right? And changing the environment. Instead of waiting for the neurodiverse people to integrate into our society, adapting to society where it fits for them. And we all benefit. And I remember our first director, Aaron Kazmarek, he came from public education. And right off the bat, when we started talking about this idea of an autism school, he says, it's always been my feeling that special education is just education done right.
Yeah.
And it makes us be a lot more intentional about how we teach concepts that otherwise we just expect them to integrate and assimilate naturally. So I love your point that it makes us take that intentional approach to make things make sense, and that everybody benefits when we do that instead of just the neurodiverse populations. Great insight.
Thank you. Absolutely.
And can you speak more a little bit what your company does and how you help prepare students to go to college? Or you talked earlier, you asked before we started, you talked about these transitions of bridging the gap. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, so when when I started the company, I had most of my, knowledge was in higher education. And when I started, like 15 years ago, a lot of our students that I would start working with were already in academic trouble. So we're getting them second, maybe third semester of college, and they're already on academic probation, which, as we all know, that's not a great place to be in terms of it's stressful. You're thinking, the students have to climb this massive hill just to get a GPA to stay at their school. So noticing that, where we really started to try to think about high school and knowing that transition between having a lot of support to then you being responsible for your support in college, trying to think about how can we get students beforehand. I mean, even the accommodations piece, a lot of students, their parents help them and they have their IEP or their school meeting at the beginning of the year. Once they get to college, that's now on them, right, to make that meeting. And a lot of students we were seeing really struggle with that self-identification to say, oh, I'm in college now. I just want to be like everyone else. I don't want to say that I need these accommodations. Or not, executive functioning. They're not thinking about, oh, I need to make this appointment in the summer because if I wait until August, I'm not going to get in to see anybody until October, November. Now I have a whole semester where I haven't used my accommodations that are, set up and I have them even if I don't want to use them. So seeing that transition, we started thinking, hey, how can we look at other transitions? And a big one, arguably, I would say another really large one is that from elementary to middle. So we're going from one classroom to maybe 6 classrooms. We're going from one teacher personality to 6 teacher personalities, right? And then from here, we're going from paper packets to things are digital. Students are responsible for the password. They don't have the password. The parents can't find the password. And so now we have just a lot more issues. And then, arguably, that's a huge social transition, just like college. Things are starting to be, students are starting to think more about, should I use social media? Should I not use social media? What are my responsibilities as a young adult? So that transition too, I think, and thinking about the personalities and the fact that the parents are now starting to struggle a little bit on how to support that transition.
Yeah, no,
And then I feel
so
like
you guys
the
are helping be the bridge for those gaps. Am I hearing right? At your service, you kind of help to build those skills to transition them and walk them into that next stage of academia or life progression. Is that right?
Yeah. So we really try to work on those transitions because that seems to be where things start I would say the wheels start falling off the bus, right? We start to see as parents, like maybe this is changing, or even in high school, like ninth or 10th grade, maybe things that these students have always used that got them through it, it's no longer enough anymore. Now the cracks are starting to show.
So help us. We have a few students here that will be transitioning from more of a elementary setting to a high school setting. So they're going from a homeroom to multiple classrooms. What advice would you give our parents that are helping their kiddos make that transition?
I mean, I always say, obviously we want to have structured support. So obviously we want to give these students independence, but also the parents are still needed, right? We're still going to need the support from the parents, but opening that communication and self-advocation is going to be super important because maybe those students have known, like you said, they're one teacher, they have them all the time. Now you're going into where you have 6 different teachers and maybe they have different teaching styles. And so I would say to work with our students and teach our students, it's okay to be like, I don't understand what's happening. Or if they miss an assignment or something goes missing, helping them to be like, hey, like, let's write an email to your teacher or let's have a conversation with your teacher and maybe helping them, but then they're the one sending the email or they're the one talking to the teacher so that we can get used to that self-advocation as we move upward.
And that's always the challenge, right? As parents, there's lots of different parenting styles, right? And I forget all the different acronyms. There's the helicopter parent and other terms, but the balance, it always seems to be difficult of not doing too much. Like we want our kids to be independent, but at the same time, we want them to do what we say. And those two things seem to be at odds with each other, right? Follow what I tell you, but make your own choices. What do you do as a facilitator? Because I'm hearing you say we want them to be prepared, but we're also being their guide. How do you balance, individualism and independence with self-advocacy with guided support and following instruction. That's just, it seems like a tightrope, and I'm curious how you approach that.
I mean, it is. And I also want to say, I think, the word, like we hear that word helicopter parent, right? But I think like, as we know, all of these parents are doing it because they want to help, and I think a lot
Yeah.
of parents, when we meet with them in college or when we meet with them before that transition, they'll be like, please help me. I've been doing this 18 years. I can't do it anymore. I can't learn one more learning system. And we're like, okay. So, I mean, for the structured support, like I said, it's like baby steps if they can get used to it as we move up. But for me, like I said, if you're going to go on vacation, right? Like, let's have the student tell the teacher, hey, I'm going to go on vacation. Like, can I get my assignments ahead of time? Or when they get back, if that's not a possibility, hey, what have I missed? Can I get a plan for how I'm going to make up my work, instead of maybe the parent sending the email, right? Like, when we think about it, that's kind of what we did when we were younger, because the technology wasn't the same. My parents probably never met with the teachers unless we were in trouble or it was open house. So sort of teaching that advocacy, or something that I tell parents that I think is difficult is sometimes we have to let them fail small things to see how they do on their own. And so make it like something that's smaller points. Like, we have our family calendar, and that your student has a quiz on Wednesday, right? Or a small point assignment on Wednesday. Then you talk about it Sunday, and then sort of from there, like, let's see how they do on Wednesday. Did they turn it in? Did they miss it? It's something small stakes, but at least we're giving them the independence to try. And if they do miss it, then teach them, hey, like, let's write your teacher and say, hey, I missed this. Can I still turn it in? So that they are advocating, or they turn it in, great, right? We're building those small steps. I would never recommend that for an exam or for something higher stakes, but I think it's a way to sort of garner a little independence while still making sure that they're not, completely failing something.
Well, let me ask you from the educator standpoint. So, from the parent standpoint, that makes a lot of sense. But if I'm a teacher and I'm working with autistic children, one in the classroom or multiple, how do you navigate that, knowing that they're transitioning to multiple different teachers, and that might add some additional stress than our neurotypical students?
Okay, so sorry, could you clarify your question?
So basically, if I'm a teacher and I'm working with autistic kids, and I know, like, making that transition from like elementary to high school. So I'm one of the teachers in this high school setting that we know that kids have different teachers and multiple tasks and multiple demands within that education environment. What advice would you give to them of working with autistic children?
I mean, first, understanding, right? So, in terms of understanding that there are going to be some missed assignments, some things that happen, and in terms of executive functioning and how to help them sort of move around that and make it not shameful or something like that, right? And then from the educator standpoint, for me, thinking about how we can make sure that things are sort of accessible, not just saying things one time. It's on the board, it's on Google Classroom, it's on their reports, wherever it needs to be so they don't forget it. I would also say, like, time blocking or chunking assignments. Instead of asking 5 questions, we have 1 question, then the next question, then the next question. Just things that I think some educators, of course, know, but maybe it's sort of forgotten as we go forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's easy to get lost in the sea of other students when you have everybody going one way and you have this small one that's going somewhere different. And it takes as much, if not more, attention for the one than it does for the 25. So it's a big ask. But when there's little things like that they can do just in process for differentiation, it makes such a huge difference. And you've mentioned a term a couple of times, and it's one that's thrown out very loosely in the neurodiverse world, but I'd like to do a little deeper dive on it, if that's okay, and it's executive functioning.
Yes, that's the hot word I think that we've been talking a lot about. So right when you said that, I looked at Nathan, I'm like, we got to talk about it.
It's somewhere I wanted to go anyways. We had a previous guest, and she did a wonderful job explaining it, because I think a lot of times we use it and we think we know what it means, but we don't always really. She's like, look, executive functioning is like if you had to break down the executives of your life, your CEO, you're managing a team. And so it's that organizational structure of giving direction to all these things that run your life and your schedule and time management. And without it, you're just kind of loose without any director guidance. You're kind of like an organization run rampant. The question I have is, I know what's out there to train legit executives, right? There's leadership conferences and there are books that we can take and people management skills. But how do we build executive function skills and dexterity within our mind and within ourselves? What does that look like?
Well, first off, I'm going to say that, especially to parents, right? It's the struggle of executive functioning is what to me is what I think is that we're always trying to fit everyone into the same plan, right? And I always say executive functioning. I like hers, but I always say it's a conductor. So you have your conductor and you have all your symphony, and we basically know when our, I don't know, flutist is off. I would not know. Maybe trombone, something very obvious, right? But when you're thinking about that, like when one is off, the whole thing is not working, right? So in terms of that, I think every student is different. I think we do try to just say, oh, we can use a planner. Like, I think everyone thinks of executive functioning skills as, let's just use a planner, we'll be okay, right? But really thinking about what works for each student. Like, I have students who they don't want to use their phone, they don't want to use technology, it doesn't help them, right? So they have Post-it notes. Maybe we have Post-it note reminders all over the wall, right? Or maybe we have they use their Google Calendar, or maybe we have a paper calendar, or we have a calendar, maybe we have a system of calendars. Like we have the main parent calendar, then we have their calendar and whatever it works. That's just thinking about the major time management piece, right? Then we're thinking about those smaller time management pieces, which, like I said, something like chunking your work into using timers. Like, let's use a timer and work on something for 20 minutes. Students get this idea in their mind, especially, I would say, as they get older and they have a lot more time, like college students. I'm going to work on that for 7 hours, Tara. I'm like, you are not going to work on that for 7 hours. Like, we're not going to do that. We're going to work on it in 30-minute increments, and we're going to take a minute, take a walk, have a snack, whatever that is, right? Timers are really great for that. I would say body doubling is one of my favorites. Right? Like that term is thrown around loosely, but I think it's what we do naturally as people. We work better when someone else is working around us than we do sitting staring at a computer by ourselves. And then it's also a good self-advocation tool if a student is working with their friend to be like, hey, I don't really understand this. Can you explain it to me? Or I'm stuck on this. So thinking about like those tools and how that all adds up to executive functioning, but everything kind of has to work together: the planning, the organization, the time management. And if that doesn't work together, then we start to see like some main signs that's not working is your student starts missing assignments. And then once they start missing assignments, I think there's that shame that comes in, right? We see that. And once that shame comes in, then they really stop turning stuff in, and then it just becomes sort of a cycle.
Well, and I like the insight you gave, if they don't like using the phone or a planner, do Post-its. And I think the frustration, I'm going to speak as a dad here for a second. The frustration we often feel is we expect our kids to be able to do certain things a certain way. Like,
yeah,
I said we're leaving in 5 minutes. Don't you know that means you should get your shoes on and use the bathroom? And even the concept of what does 30 minutes feel like? They start watching a show that's 2 hours long. I said we're leaving in 30 minutes. I know, we'll go right after the show. Like it's like burns your brain. But where I'm asking myself a question is, do I need to stop trying to teach my kids my executive skills, right? The way I conduct my symphony, and instead ask, what does their symphony look like? Do they organize differently? And building a system around the way their mind operates. And now that means I have to come into it with a certain level of curiosity to understand what does that look like in their head and what system might work for them that maybe I would never use. And for me, like, you look around and the Post-it note people, great. Like, and in my world, there's the red dot and there's no red dot, where some people have 10,000 unread emails and I can't have, more than 5. But they have their systems.
10,000 guys.
But they have their systems, and that's how they
Me too.
operate. And so instead of getting frustrated with, why don't you do it the same way as me, being okay with, you do it differently, and let's find a way that works for you.
Absolutely. And knowing that's going to change throughout your life. I'm sure that what I did in college, like I really could sit down for 5-6 hours in college. That's who I was. But now with technology and things, I can't even focus for 20 minutes sometimes because there's like so many things going off. There wasn't smartphones then. There wasn't all the things, right? There wasn't my Slack and then my email. Nobody ever really emailed us in the early 2000s, right?
Right.
So when
It would
we're
take
thinking about that,
forever to check your email back
just
then,
to get on. Well, yeah, and our professors, there was a syllabus. They stuck by it, right? Now, like I technology is wonderful in a lot of ways, but I do feel like as educators, when there are so many systems that we as adults are struggling to understand, then it's a problem when you have students who are making these transitions. But yes, knowing that you're going to let them do it their own way as long as it's successful, and knowing there's going to be some parts of it that aren't successful and you try the next thing. But trying to push someone else to do something your way is probably never going to be successful, and it is just going to lead to frustration. Especially, I work with lots of students whose parents are neurodivergent. So a lot of times they're like, oh my God, I feel like the blind lead in the blind chair. Like, I don't really know what I have a problem organizing myself. So how am I supposed to help them? And that's where you just have to figure it out together or on the opposite side, you have parents who have no problem with that. So it's very frustrating for them because their students can't automatically do it. But there's a million systems now. So whatever works for them. And like you said, asking them, hey, this isn't working the way that I'm trying to tell you to do it. So what works best for you? Or what can we try these 3 different things? Also, people love choices. Give us some choices. Throw out some things, right? Instead of saying it's only this way. Let's try these 3 different ways in the next 3 weeks and let's see what works.
Well, and I think I read on your programs that you guys also help autistic children get into college and prepare them for that lifestyle. Is that correct? And if so, what do you do to help kids that are neurodiverse to prepare for college?
Yeah, I mean, we have a really robust summer program where I feel like this was kind of something that we all did. I don't know if it was just me, but I went to Florida State and we had to take a class for like 6 weeks at the beginning about the school and orientation and how to be a student and where everything is. And they don't really do that anymore. And orientation, I went to one and they helped me register and do all that stuff in April, right? Before I started in August. But a lot of students don't have that. So we really work on, let's talk about, obviously the academics, like let's get your accommodations appointment early in the summer. Let's make sure you have your paperwork. Let's make sure you have a most recent, paperwork diagnosis so that, sometimes schools require something that isn't more than like 10 years old, right? So let's make sure we have that. Let's make sure we have a plan for your medications if you're taking any, right? Then let's go to that accommodations meeting and know what we want to ask for. Because a lot of schools, there are things that everybody gets, but that if you can say that you need to ask for, then, that works a lot better for everyone. Then we also look at like the wellness and the sleeping. Hey, you've maybe always had your own room. Now you're going to be with 3 other people in a room. So how are we going to navigate that? Because sometimes there is housing exceptions for a single, sometimes there's not, right? Sometimes we have students who have some kind of emotional support animal. And so how do we fill out the paperwork for that? And then helping them with registration. A lot of schools, too, will just send a video on how to register. And sometimes we'll get students, like 2 weeks before school, and they didn't even know they had an email. So they have no classes. They have no, right? So then we're working on what do we do to get there. So we really try to work on preparing them academically, maybe socially, and then looking at that wellness aspect and how things are going to be different.
Gotcha. It almost sounds like what you're doing is as helpful for the student as it is for the parent.
Yeah.
I mean, you're almost kind of parent coaching and helping them be equipped for these transitions too, right?
Yeah, I mean, we really refer to it as a bridge to college, which a lot of colleges have. Well, I would say a lot of, especially community colleges have. So we sort of think about that bridge and how important it is. And it is, like I said, it's important for the parents because they get really frustrated that their student doesn't know they have an email or they don't know how to register. And then the parents trying to register, and then it just becomes kind of maybe a not so great situation when everybody's already stressed about their student leaving.
Yeah. My son's getting ready to go to college too. I might just have you come over and help me because I'm really lost.
It's a lot, right? It's so
is.
many different systems, and even thinking about like I try to do some professional development for professors, and that it's like, oh, we have a syllabus. We also write emails. We also have announcements on our learning management system. In the learning management system, we have a Google Drive. I'm like, guys, can we like simplify things for everybody involved, because it's a lot to keep up
we
with.
we've learned that educators love Google and Google Docs, and they love that stuff
Yeah.
more than I was prepared to. Let me ask. I'm going to put you on the spot for a second. Is there
Okay.
any university that you've worked with that you feel is more autistic friendly, or a little bit that you would almost like, hey, this university gets the population. Mom and dad, you might want to look at this.
Let's see. I mean, there's a few that we have on our website, but Denver tends to be like DU tends to be a really big one. A lot of
See, you already
students, they just
speak my language. I'm a big Denver Bronco fan, so I already like that answer already. I did not tell her to say that, but okay, keep going.
this was sponsored by. No. So in terms of that, yeah, like Denver University is great, but honestly, like there's a lot of schools now that have really great programs that have those bridges. So if you're looking as a parent, I would look for that before your student applies, and I know a lot of students want to go where they want to go, and I totally understand that. But maybe that's something worth looking into, or when you go to orientation, having that go to accessibility and have that conversation. Like, what do you guys offer? And, because a lot of schools now are even working where students with autism can move in early if they choose. It doesn't have to be, right? But so they can kind of get used to the social norms. They can go to the cafeteria. This is what this looks like. This is where you're going to be here. And it's kind of like an orientation a couple of days early. So I would say we are, as higher ed, doing that a little better. But, we can always do it better.
Well, and I know that you're not here to promote Denver University, but what do you see that they do that's right? Like that other colleges that you wish they would do that a little bit better?
I just think they have a great, their accessibility program is really sort of designed to support students. I would say there's more time, right? Whereas a lot of accessibility, they do a great job. I've never been to any college where their accessibility program wasn't amazing. They just have a lot of students. So that's, when you're looking at supporting 1,000 students and you have a smaller team, that's where I think the issue is.
Hmm, gotcha. Well, any advice you have for our parents out there that are trying to prepare their children to go to college, or especially in the autistic world, that you would recommend, or some advice you would give our parents?
So for sure, I would say teaching them to body double. Like I said, I think that is such an amazing thing to learn, because I think that's helpful socially for students with autism, because it's
You
a lot
mentioned that
less.
earlier, body doubling.
Yeah.
Can you like really clearly say, what does that mean? I mean, you mentioned having somebody next to you doing something similar. Like, what is body doubling, just so that's not lost on the ears listening?
No, it really is. Thank you for asking me. So it really is that people in general do better, but especially as students or people with ADHD or autism or AUHD, they do better when someone else is with them. They're more able to get their work done. They're able to concentrate. Like there's been studies of even people like folding laundry. They fold their laundry better if someone's there. My students tell me, hey, like if I need to do like something, I will call my friend into my dorm room so that she can sit there while I do it. It's just having somebody else in there. So for me in school, right, sometimes it's socially weird, right? And so even if there's somebody in your class and you're trying to socially make friends or whatever, be like, hey, like I'm going to go study on Thursday at the library if you want to meet there. Right. And then, as I said, we're working together instead of maybe a student sitting by themselves in their dorm room, feeling overwhelmed, not knowing what to do, and just not getting started. We know with a lot of students, the biggest hurdle is getting started on their work. Right. But you're with somebody else that you can even say, hey, like I said, hey, I'm struggling with this. Can you help me get started? Or I'm not really clear on the instructions. Is there a way that we can talk about it? Right. And so I think doing that at home, like I think about when I was young, like after we ate dinner, like we did our homework with my parents sitting there, right? There wasn't the internet at that point. If there was, it was the dial up. So we sat at the table. Our parents were doing something, whether my mom was like balancing the checkbook and my dad was reading. So learning that when we were sitting at the table, we were together, we were all doing our work. That helped us focus. I could ask my parents questions. And I think doing that in high school, and that keeps the students from sitting and feeling frustrated and not starting, and then feeling shame and starting that whole cycle of just being like, hey, mom or dad, I don't understand how to do this. So
When
can
it's
you
the
help
do
me?
as I do model, not the do as I say.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes. And if you're telling your student that they can't use their phone, then let's just not have our phone either. So that we can support that, right? Like, so that we can, like you said, so we can be models of that behavior. But it really helps students, I think, be able to be social, make friends in a new environment, and just get more things done. Like when I was younger, nobody studied in their room. Everybody was always at the kitchen table at home, or when we went to college, we were all in the library together. Because you know that if you're sitting by yourself, like especially now, you're gonna go on your phone, you're gonna watch TV, you're gonna do things that maybe aren't as great for work when you're feeling frustrated or just not getting started. Whereas there's that pressure of another human sitting next to you, like, we feel it at work sometimes, right? When someone's like heavily working, you're like, oh God, am I supposed to be doing that?
I know. Nathan
So
does that to me all the time. His desk is right by me. He just stares at me as
The
I'm
watchful
working.
eyes.
so
Yeah,
yeah.
and I like that because it creates a sense of pairing and a belonging and connection, and that's the underlying of all this, is giving them the feeling that they're not alone, and that even if they are doing it different, at least they're with somebody doing the same thing, maybe in a different way, but they're doing it together and at the same place and the same time. So I love that. So you call it body doubling, you call it modeling, but it's being with them instead of just giving them the direction. I love it.
I love it too.
Yeah.
I think about our kids, like we have a nice little dining table that they like to do their homework with. And I'm there too, and I'll just talk to them. And usually I'm just like, I don't know, just talking, whatever. And I never understood the psychology of that. So I'm glad you brought that in. That's awesome.
Mhm.
I'm going to do that more.
What's really funny, there's like adults, and like, I know they're young adults, but like adults doing it now, like having parties where everyone brings something they've been putting off. So like someone will bring up, like, I did a workshop at
Procrastination
it.
party.
I went to this amazing neurodivergent conference, and I did like a little workshop, and people literally came, and it was like March. And so like 3 people made appointments to have their taxes done. And like another
there you
person
go.
was like, oh my God, I need new insurance. Another person needed a passport, right? Like just sitting down while other people are doing things is super helpful.
See, we can do that. We can have a big, what do you call it? A body double?
Body
We just
doubling. Yeah, big body double party.
Party. We need to start that now. I
Love it.
that. Well, awesome, Doctor. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Any kind of last minute advice you'd like to give our parents out there?
I mean, I think my last minute advice is always never lose hope. No matter what the transition is, no matter where they're at. I've worked with students who were failing out, and that we were able to get to where they needed to be. Maybe it was a change in major, maybe it was a change in school, maybe it was just something different, but they were able to get where they needed to be with some structured support. So just knowing that everybody feels, frustrated and a little, hopeless at sometimes, but there's always hope. There's always somewhere to go, somewhere to move.
Well, thank you so much. We're going to put your contact information on our page so everybody knows how to get a hold of your company or you if they have additional questions. Thank you, everybody, for making us part of your day. Please don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a conversation that inspires connection. Want to give a big shout out to our producer, Jesse Palmer, and our wonderful marketing director, Dallin Davis. Until next time, let's do some good.